Welcome to the Rise to Shine podcast with Noelle Custis, where we ignite the spark to discover your favorite self. It is time to get real, ladies. Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Rise to Shine podcast. I'm your host, Noelle Custis. Today, I am thrilled to welcome a truly inspiring guest to the podcast. Viorica is a powerhouse speaker. She's a visionary leader and co-founder of a groundbreaking ministry in Romania. Her unwavering dedication to Jesus and her mission to uplift orphans and abandoned children has transformed countless lives. Viorica is also an expert in empowering families through powerful financial strategies, helping them achieve both personal and financial success. With her passion for continual learning and adventure, she inspires others to embrace their full potential and live a life of purpose. Welcome, Viorica. I'm so excited that you're here with us today.
Thank you so much, Noelle. Oh my goodness. It is quite literally such an honor and a blessing to be here and to be with you to share just whatever it is that is designed for today, for this specific podcast, and for whoever the hearers are on today that will be receiving this. I know that it is specifically tailored for exactly your needs. So I'm very much looking forward to being here and so honored to get to have this conversation with you.
Yes, me too. Well, I have to say, truth be told, this summer, I think it was back in July, I was sitting at my desk and you went on live on Instagram, and I was at my desk and I was working away, and I peeked over at my phone and I saw that you had gone live, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to click in. It was early in the morning, and I feel like it was just this perfect timing. And you were reflecting on some notes from a conference that you had attended. And it was so good that I knew right then and there, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to invite her to the podcast to share all of this with you, because there were so many beautiful nuggets in that space that I thought this is going to be a great conversation. And so I was so excited. We had met before when I was at a summit in Idaho last year, and I got to hear you speak, and I know you're a part of our Business and Bubbly organization. So it has been so fun to just get to know each other, but I'm so excited to really get to know each other even more. And that's where we'll start. Is I would just love for you to really be able to dive in and tell us what you're doing. I'd love for our audience to get to know you, just on a more personal level. So if you can share a little bit about your journey and what drives your passion for making an impact, both, if you want to talk about your ministry, your work with families, just what experiences you've had to be the leader that you are today.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I'm so thankful that you would start in that space, mainly because there, especially in the podcast world and in business and leadership in general, so much of it is tailored around what you can do, right? Of like what the mission is, like what are you doing? You become tied to your purpose, or who you are becomes tied to what you can do. And quite literally, I think that that's so backwards, right? I think it's so backwards mainly because what you do truly does stem from exactly what you just shared, is that it stems from that which drives you, that which you identify with inside, like the identity that God has first given you. That's where things should absolutely stem from. And for me, I can honestly say that since I have, I met the Lord when I was a young, I don't know, I'd say probably in my 19, 20, so young adolescence, early adulthood. And at the time, before that, I was on a pursuit to just figure out what my life was all about, right? Like how to prove everyone wrong, that I could do this and I could do that. And I, was going to, applying for medical school and doing all the things that the world said was the identity of success is, to get a, degree that was honorable. And, I was traveling the world at the time. And I started to recognize very quickly, just being in on different continents and in different spaces and places, that everything felt the same, right? Like it was
Mm,
always the same challenge, always the same problem, always the same everything. And the common denominator in all of these problems was me, right? It
mm,
was me. I started to realize it's not the world that's broken, it's me. And at that time, God met me, right? And I started to realize that there's so much more to life. There's so much more to all the to-dos. And that, more for me, I realized was Jesus, and was this whole identity that you are called to give your life for others, right? That you're called to serve. And in the context of figuring out who this God was that all of a sudden I fell in love with, I started to understand that outside of serving and outside of giving your life to for someone else, and for that work of of the selflessness in life, everything it does feel meaningless, right? You hear
mm.
that same old adage, it's better to give than to receive. And really, if you ask yourself the big question of why is it better to give than it is to receive? It all makes sense when you realize that we were designed to love one another. We were designed, like, that's our foundation of who we are, is to just love one another. And so in the pursuit of loving, right, of loving my neighbor, loving my family, loving the people in my whoever was put in my atmosphere, at
Mhm.
that point in time, I started to find myself in different spaces and in different places. And I started to realize the need all around me. And obviously I come from Romania, or not obviously, like, I just want to help introduce myself a little bit in that regard. I was born in Romania. I was born in Bucharest. And I come from a family that is kind of divided. My comes from a gypsy root, and my dad is just Romanian. And in that, like, gypsy descent, it has a stigma that comes with it that really puts us puts us, I won't identify necessarily with that, but puts that culture in a position where they don't get jobs, they're not, they're kind of like the outcasts of society, right? And
Wow.
so that being said, there is these roots and these family roots that I started to see that could have been my reality.
Mm,
And there's this poverty level that comes with that stigma that keeps people in this, like, vicious cycle of need. And I remember going back to Romania one year and starting to see the poverty all around and realizing, wow, this was my lot in life. Like, had God not intervened, this would have been my lot in life. And it gave me a whole different sense of purpose when it came to the fight and, like, just the strive, right? And it really started to fuel the foundation of what and it gave that assignment of, like, yes, you give your life for others, like, you serve others, but to what
mm,
capacity? And that's where God started to really define for me what it looked like to actually put that in, like, visualize that in a very specific way, that if I don't grow as a person, it's impossible for me to then turn around and look at where my life should have been, and the trajectory at which it was on course to be, and make an impact and make a difference. I had to grow. I had to
mhm,
become that leader, that, person of impact, that person who had more than enough in order to be able to offer that to someone else and help someone else. Because I started to see very quickly, you can't give if you yourself don't have.
mm.
You can't
Yeah,
make a difference if you yourself are struggling. And
right.
so, through a lot of prayer and a lot of intentional putting myself in the rooms and in a lot of different rooms, I started to get fueled by this passion of, it is absolutely my duty to grow. It's my duty to grow because I've been given such a huge blessing. I have been literally gifted this, like, new life, right? Where I
Mm,
live in the country of opportunity. I live in a space where it's all about whatever it is I pursue, not based on what somebody else puts on me. It is my obligation to become the best that I possibly can, because I've been given this gift that of life. And so that has been what has fueled every passion of mine when it comes to, business, when it comes to ministry, when it comes to friendships, when it comes to getting to be in the room. You said, Noelle, something very, very special and powerful about, how we met, about being at Business and Bubbly and being in that same room And I just want to speak a little bit to that, especially to your listeners and to the people that follow you and that love you. Get in the room, right? There's
Mhm.
something very powerful that cannot be transmitted in any other way besides being in the room. There's an anointing when you are there in person to person, belly to belly, heart to heart, just as you've probably heard Noelle say.
Mhm.
When you're in the room, the magic happens and you get
Yeah.
to meet and rub shoulders with the person that literally has exactly what you need and that can speak into your life in a completely different way than a recorded podcast that has been who knows what, or in something, in a replay or anything of that nature. Being in the room is so, so vital, because there is where quite literally your destiny opens up. And so get in the room.
So
But
good.
anyway, so
So
that
good. Yeah, no, I love that. And I'm sitting here and I'm just going, "Oh my goodness. I knew this would happen is I would be listening to you because you just have this beautiful way of sharing and bringing insight." And one of the things that stood out to me when you were on this live on Instagram that day was this idea of living in congruence. And you talked about one of the nuggets that you had walked away with from this conference was that, that question of, are we truly living the life we say we want? Because it's easy to throw around things like, and I want to say you had said, people saying slay the day, like I'm going to slay the day. What are we actually slaying? Are we just creating this productivity for the sake of it, or are we aligning our actions with our purpose? And I loved that that is exactly what you were talking about without me even asking this question, but I feel like we can even go a little bit deeper about it, is just hearing your thoughts on how can we make sure that we're not just talking about it, but we're actually living a life in a meaningful way.
That's right. That's an excellent question. And to be honest, I love the context of congruency, the topic of it in and of itself, because it is, in my personal opinion, super convicting,
Mm,
right? Mainly because you can do like what you said. You can hashtag slay the day, killing it, like
mhm,
all of that, like boss queen, all the stuff of all the things that sound productive. It sounds fantastic. But when you actually have to take the word congruency and and like fit that into your own life and ask yourself the hard questions, is what I'm saying actually producing? Is what I'm
mm,
saying actually creating, like in the context of scripture, it talks about bearing fruit. Am I
right.
bearing fruit of whatever it is that I say that I'm doing? And the crazy part is I truly believe that everything comes down to measurements.
Mm,
We can say all day long, oh, yeah, I'm working so hard. I'm so super, super busy. But what are you busy on? Like, what have you been measuring? Because
right.
anything that's measured, then you can actually put it into its proper function, where you say, oh, yeah, this one, in back to the whole bearing fruit context, if you
Mhm,
put in a little tree, if it's just a few stems, well, if you went to measure it and it was supposed to be an X amount in order to bear fruit, and it wasn't, you have to ask the hard questions. Why? What am I
mm,
doing wrong? Is the soil wrong? Have I not been watering? Have I not been whatever? Well, in the context of your life and in your business and the things that we're pursuing, it's exactly the same way. Whatever you don't measure is guaranteed to die. It's guaranteed
mm,
to die. It's guaranteed to pull back, even like with friendships. You
mhm,
know, if I was in Chicago a few weeks ago, and while we were there, we were listening to, we went to church, and the pastor was talking about this whole idea of how he went to meet with a friend, and his friend was telling him, he showed him his calendar, and on his calendar he had specific friends, and it was in this whole list of like, oh, it's my follow-up, like in the follow-up was friendships, like certain friendships. And the
mm,
pastor asked him at that time, he says, doesn't that feel disingenuous? Doesn't that feel a little bit mechanical? Like, shouldn't friendships be something that is more organic?
mm,
And the response of this gentleman was, Well, yeah, sure. Maybe it can be, but typically something that isn't paid attention to, where it isn't measured, right? That you don't have a way to really track. How can you really know if you've been a good friend when you
Mm,
just organically let it happen, right? And I
right.
think that's a big deal in our lives where oftentimes we just feel like we're going to go with the flow, we're going to organically let things happen. And I think there's a space for that,
Hmm.
but not in the context of when you are looking to say, look, in this specific area of my life, I want to see the growth happen. If I am being this person, the person that I say that I am, how can I truly know if I am being that person? How do I really know if I'm slaying the day? Well,
Mm,
if it's not measured, then there's no way for you to know that. You're just literally going on a whim and hoping, versus when you measure at the different areas of your life and you ask yourself the hard questions. What's the quality of my friendships?
mm,
What's the quality of my reputation? When I ask something or somebody for something, what's the likelihood of them saying yes?
mm.
Why?
Right.
Because you have a lack of congruency in who you think you really are. And a simple way that I have found in my own life is just to measure everything and to do it for the context of visibility, for the context of transparency, and for the idea of just being able to say, I am training and teaching my subconscious to trust me, because
Mm,
who I say I am, I actually am. Right?
right. Right. Yeah, we were just having these conversations this weekend. As a matter of fact, I was telling you before the show that we had our mastermind here, and that was such a huge topic for
Mm,
us as women. Just really talking about, am I who I really say I am? And
yes.
I even talk about it on the podcast. I want people to, those who know me in real life and those who don't know me but might meet me in real life and have heard my podcast, I want that to align with, this
Yeah.
is the person that I am. These are the things that I'm sharing. I'm going to be vulnerable. I am going to share the things that are on my heart. And I want that to be the same. I feel like it's
Right.
so important because I just feel like even going back to you saying being in the same room with other people, it's in those spaces that we get to know each other, and that's where we get to build those relationships and build that trust, because it it is a space where we can truly be who we are.
Yes.
And I feel like we've lost that a little bit in our society. And this is kind of a perfect segue, because one of the other things that stood out to me that you had talked about, and I thought, man, all I kept thinking during your whole live was, I wish I would have been in that room, because
That's
it
right.
sounded like an incredible day that you had. But one of the things that you also talked about was this idea of igniting your life, not just lighting a spark, but really setting our lives ablaze with purpose. And you mentioned someone asking the question, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is such a brilliant way, because there was the first part to the question, but then there's a second part, and this is the part we'll visit today. But I believe the whoever was speaking had said, who would be at your table if you could have any five people?
That's
But then
right.
there was this deeper question, because I love that question. And I love that first part of the question, because I think, who really would that be? And you can certainly answer that if you choose to. But what I loved even more was going deeper, and what would our lives need to look like for our name to show up at someone else's table? And
That's right.
I say that, and it just, like, I don't know, there's something about it that gives me the chills, because when you had said that, I was like I was going, oh my gosh, we need to talk about this, because I felt like, what a profound way to have that self reflection. And I would just love for
Mm.
you to dive deeper into this. And what are your thoughts on how we can shape our lives to be at those kinds of tables, to be at other people's tables, that we are actually on the lips of other humans that would see us in a way that, they would want us to be at their table. What do you think around that?
I love that question, and I couldn't agree more. Each time, even hearing you say that gives me goosebumps, because I truly believe it's such a profound thing,
Yeah.
to really contextualize, to think about, to let it land deep in you. But
Mm,
before I answer that question, I want to go back a little bit to something you said about being in the room,
yeah.
because you talked about, being in the room, you get to be who you are, right? You get to
Mhm.
show up as who you are. And I think a lot of times what happens when you get in the room, especially if you're not used to being in the room, and I want to encourage anyone that
True.
is not used to being in the room and has this apprehension of showing up, this apprehension, or if you're anything like me, I'm very much a learned extrovert, but I am a deep seated introvert. And
Yep.
everything about who I am as a person, I do and love without people. I love to do it without people. I love to like fill my cup. I love to have alone time. I love all the things. However, at a certain point in time, I was prompted, right? Obviously, again, through the Lord, that,
Mhm.
sorry, my laptop, that in order to do and be congruent with who I believe He's calling me to be, I need to get out of my own head, and I need to get
Mm.
in the room. Like, you can't love people if you're not with people. Like,
So glad you're saying this.
you have to be with people. And
Yeah.
so, as a challenge, and out of like that context of obedience, I said yes.
Mhm.
Like, I said yes to
Mhm.
God, with every fiber of my being so uncomfortable and feeling like I was going to throw up, finding every reason to hide in the corner or to be awkward and be the first one
Yeah.
to like talk and say the most random stupid things, that as the words were coming out of my mouth, I felt like the biggest idiot. And so I just want to speak to you,
Love
the girl who's on the sidelines, who is watching, who has not come in the room yet, and who feels like, oh, well, that's for those girls who like look all good and speak really well and all the things. No, 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 it's for you. It's
that.
for
Mhm.
you. I'm telling you, it's for you. If this resonates at all, I want you to be courageous. And the next room that you can find yourself in, put yourself there. Because, like Noelle said, when you get into that room, you get to find out a facet of who you are, not who
Yeah.
you are fully, but
Right.
a facet of who you are. And in other words, you will start to see the beginning phases of areas that you yourself are being called up to, are being
Mhm.
called up to work out. Because let's be honest, we're all a work in progress, and we're not all polished. And the call that God has on your life, the amazing things that you have that are designed for you to thrive in and shine and all the things, they are not done alone. They're done by ironing, sharpening iron, and realizing the areas where, hey, maybe I am too quick to talk over someone because I'm nervous. Hey,
Mm.
maybe I am too quick to like judge that person because I'm judging myself. Hey, maybe I'm too quick to, you name it. But you get to start to observe, while you're in the room, your own personal behaviors. And you'll start to see and really start to reflect on, how do I behave? How do people react? Am I the person that everyone listens to when someone's talking? When I talk, do most people turn around? Or do they start to look at me and start to hear me talk, and all of a sudden their eyes shift to someone else, and then they go like start talking to that other person?
Mm.
Right? Is
So
that
good.
me? And if
Yeah.
it is me, then there's certain things you got to learn about yourself. You have to
Yeah.
learn how to ask better questions. You have to learn how to like add more value. There's things that we need to learn, right? To bring ourselves to grow into that which, is already in you, but needs to be refined and just, strengthened. And so to me, that was such an important thing that I felt I needed to share in that context, only because I was that girl. And I can say I still am that girl in certain settings, because
Yeah.
as you know, Noelle, you're comfortable with certain rooms,
Mhm.
But what if you're being called in order to become the person that is spoken and is said on the lips of those people that want you at their table? What rooms do you have to find yourself in that you need to level up to? Right?
Mm. So good because I mean, in all honesty, Viorica, I was thinking about this last year when we met. So that was the first time I met you, was walking into this room.
Yeah.
And I can resonate so much with what you're saying because people who know me now or who have just met me within the last, let's say, 6 months, maybe a year, think that I am someone that naturally feels comfortable on a stage, that naturally feels comfortable speaking, that naturally feels comfortable walking into a room, when the truth of the matter is that I absolutely feel like when I would walk into a room, I felt like everybody could hear my heart beating out of my chest because I was terrified,
Right.
absolutely terrified. And when I met you last year, I'll never forget walking in, and that was really the first time I had ever been asked to speak on a stage in that capacity, in that
Right.
context. I have done some speaking as a teacher, as an educator, that kind of thing, but even then I was really great at talking in front of my students and being silly and being myself. But when I got in front of other adults, peers, coworkers,
Yeah.
it was like, please put me in the background. I do not want, that's when the introvert part of me came out. I always said, if you were in my circle, I would be more outgoing and the extrovert. But until I got to know you, I definitely had my safe space. And in that room last year, I recall it so vividly, feeling this like feeling like an ugly duckling, in a sense,
Mhm.
just feeling
Yeah.
like I'm out of place. I don't feel comfortable. This isn't where I'm comfortable. However, I also heard God going, this is where you're meant to be, and I'm going to call you for more.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
was that feeling of, oh no, wait a minute. I don't mind being called for maybe this much more, like maybe an inch or two more, but I don't want to grow a whole foot,
Yes.
I don't want to do that. I was very reluctant and hesitant, but getting into more of those rooms, I started to hear his voice much more clearly. I started to trust myself. And like you said, it was making a decision
Yeah.
of, I'm going to listen to this because there is this knowing. And we're going to talk about that in a minute because I know you touched on that as well. But it's so funny how this is all aligning with itself. But I love that you said it's getting into the room so you're with people,
Yeah.
so people know who you are. Because I
Yeah.
do believe with all of my heart that we are all put on this earth to do something, to be
Yes.
somebody, and I'm not saying you have to be, on the stages. I'm not even saying that. I mean, we can make massive impact doing things with our families, with our friends. But
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
I do believe that we weren't meant to do life alone. And I do believe we all have meaning and we all have purpose.
Yeah.
And, I loved what you were saying about that.
I love that. And it's true. I think that, I if God's design for us was to be alone, he wouldn't have made Eve for Adam. He would have left Adam alone with the animals and he would have been, enjoy your life and eat all you can want. You have the a la carte, right? Like enjoy it. But Adam was lonely. He wanted someone after his own kind. And God was so gracious in knowing his design to say, yeah, because man's not meant to be alone. And so, whatever capacity that means for each one of us, that's
Mhm.
something that we have to define and have to understand. And
Yeah.
in the context of back to your question, as far as like,
Uh-huh.
you know, what would cause someone to have you on their lips,
Mm.
right? I think something so specific for me that really resonated in the context of that, as I really dwelt on it and as I really it took some time of meditation. I can't fully answer the question just yet because I truly believe it's a developing one.
Yeah.
But a big portion of it that God really started to show me was that the most crucial part in that whole context is identifying what your true values are.
Mm,
Who are you? Like, and really at the end of the day, I love to use the context of when you stand before God one day, when your time is up and you're before the throne. What was the most valuable thing? If you could tell God, I gave it my all, and I was X, Y, and Z. What is that X, Y, and Z for you? Who do
mhm,
you believe he truly made you to be? Because
mm,
what happens is we value people, right? We look at them and we respect things that we see in ourselves out of them. When
mhm,
we see people that we lift up on a pedestal, it's because they carry something that you yourself either want or have,
mm,
right? And I think a lot of times you probably already have it. You just don't have it to that degree. And you may have not identified it. And so half the time, as I was like, heard that question of who would be at your table,
mhm,
right? Who is it that if, you could at the pinnacle of your life, that you
mhm,
could have the most influential people at your table, who would that be? And I
mhm,
started to ask myself, God, who would those people be? And he
mhm.
started to show me different things about, like, for example, one of the people that's going to be that I would love to be at my table is Harriet Tubman.
Mm.
Okay. And
Right?
it was such a weird thing for God to bring that up in my mind of like, Harriet
Yeah,
Tubman, that's really weird. Like, okay. And he started to identify it for me of like, why Harriet Tubman? And
right.
I started to realize, oh my gosh, the biggest reason was because this woman who had everything against her, had to trust that what she saw God saying was literally him with and put her life at risk each and every time for the purpose of saying, I saw it and God said, yeah, like God showed it to me. So
Mm,
therefore I'm going to go. And everyone thought she was crazy, right?
mm,
Until she wasn't. And
mhm,
that to me was like, oh my gosh, yes, God, everyone will think you're crazy until you're not.
mhm.
But what if you don't take the first step? What
Right.
if you don't do it? What if that crazy thing, you never actually took the step forward because you allowed every naysayer and everyone's opinion to block that which was designed to be the most glorious thing in your life, that
Mhm,
sets you apart in such a way that it was like, no, only God through you could have done that. And so
mhm,
to me, it was like, oh my gosh, that's a value system for me that I dramatically like really press into and love and like ask God to help me with of like, no, Lord, let me be that person who against every odd looks like a crazy person to everyone else
mhm.
until I'm not. And so I started to realize that in order to become the person that is on people's lips, you
Right.
can't become that which you yourself aren't, like, don't have a value for, right? Like
Mm,
I'm not a man. I can't be a man, and I can never try and be like, oh, I just want to protect, blah, blah, blah. Like I want to protect, but not to that degree,
right.
right? Like I don't have that level of testosterone. I'm just not that. I wasn't made that way. But as a mother, I can protect in a way that as a mother could protect, right?
Right.
Like I can be mama bear and be this crazy mama bear person because it's within my identity to be a mama, like a
Mm,
mama bear. I'm not a daddy bear. I'm a mama bear,
mhm,
right? And they're value systems that are important to me that I love based on how I was designed
mhm.
is what I'm going to see in someone else and what I'm going to value and what I'm going to lift up on a pedestal to have to want them at my table. Well,
Yeah.
as you start to honor who you are and what you like, how you were designed and how God made you and the qualities that are within you, the talents and the gifts that are within you, and pressing forward to like say at whatever cost I'm going to put myself around other people that see the same thing that I see and that are willing to challenge me and that are willing to, to be in this fight with me. I
Mhm,
truly believe doing that and being courageous enough to stand, like, to stand the test of adversity and to stand with whenever things are hard and when things are like, you know like, for example, we gave earlier about putting yourself in the room when you feel like a total, like, out of place, totally weird, but some little voice inside of you is saying, go, do
Mm,
it.
mhm.
I believe it's that truly,
Yeah,
with time and compounded, is what then creates that huge ripple effect to where you have it the impact that you're designed to have. And when you do it tirelessly, when you put your head down and you just focus on that character building of being congruent with, like, no, this is who I am.
yeah,
I truly believe that is what creates that that type of impact that says, I want that. I want her at my table. I want to
mhm,
be like her, because I believe people are inspired not by what you say, but by who you are and what you do.
mhm,
Right? Like, saying is a
absolutely.
part of it, but
Right.
what you do.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely. And it does. It all ties back to that congruency. And then it also ties into where you had talked about as well, and we had mentioned earlier about this inner knowing.
Yeah.
And if we don't answer that, N I believe you had talked about, if you don't answer that, no one else is gonna know.
Yeah.
You're gonna know, but no one else is gonna know.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that it really could affect the entire trajectory of our lives when
Yes.
we're not responding to that inner knowing, because that inner knowing is planted there for a reason. I do
Right.
believe that with all of my heart. And, I mean, I know you talked about how critical it is to listen to that,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to living out our mission or living out our purpose. And so, it all it all just has such meaning. There's just such a deeper meaning to all of, just life. I mean, we're not and I guess that's why probably at 50 years old, most people are looking at me uh thinking I'm a little crazy in that, hey, we thought you were retiring. I said, no, 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 I was retiring from teaching, but I still have so much life to live because I did answer that inner knowing that I am supposed to do something different. And it was the scariest choice of my
Oh, yeah.
life to
Oh, yeah.
leave something that I was so connected to. And it was really my identity. That's how I identified myself. It was always as being a teacher. It was very awkward for me to say, what does this other part of life look like for me? What does this next chapter look like for me? Because
Yeah.
I didn't even know how to identify it. But what I did know is I did not want to ever live with regret. I wanted my children to see that I wanted to be the example. I wanted
Yeah.
to live out what I was saying and what I was speaking. And if things were hard, and they were at the time super
Right.
hard, like the most challenging part of my life, but I thought I can either sit in this or I can answer the call.
Yes.
And I didn't know where that was going to lead me, but I trusted. I trusted in knowing that it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And where I'm going in it, I don't know exactly, but I did know that I had to step away from one thing to start something new.
Yeah.
And gosh, what I just had no idea, we have no idea what is ahead of us and what we're gonna be called for or situations we're gonna be put in, but just the importance of answering that inner knowing and not ignoring
Absolutely.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think with that too, what is for me has been really an important thing to really kind of cultivate and talk
Mhm.
about, especially with, like, say for example, agents that I train in my team of people that that I'm very connected with when it comes to ministry stuff, or like just like
Yeah.
pouring into them. There is that inner knowing, like you were talking about, how you feel like everybody kind of has that. That's fact. Like, that's absolutely true. And the problem is that half the time people don't realize that it's there, right? They don't
Mm,
realize that it's
great
there, and
point.
there is a training that's involved in getting to where that knowing becomes so strong, and it becomes something so quick to respond to that you don't feel that you have to wrestle with this context of, is it or isn't it? And a
Mhm.
really great way to kind of do that and really to identify for yourself and to create this, again, it always goes back to the subconscious of like knowing that you can trust yourself,
Yeah.
is looking back at your past, at your life, at all the past wins. And it's not just the wins that were like identified wins of like, oh, I ran that marathon, or oh, I whatever. No, not those things, which those are important too. But like,
Right.
look at the entire trajectory of your life from the time you were, sure, maybe an adolescent, whatever, that where you were told what to do. Okay, we're
Mhm.
going to take that part out. But even then, if you're in that space where, even with your family, where you just knew you had to do this for your mom or dad, or you just knew you had to whatever. But then as you become a young adult and into adulthood, there were so many areas of your life. If you take the time to do the inventory and to actually write things down and recognize, wait, I remember life where I don't know why, I just knew that I needed to do that. And I
Mhm.
don't know why, I just felt led to this person. And I don't know why. And as you start to identify them and stack those knowings,
Mhm.
right? Those wins in your life where all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, I actually have been a very perceptive person most of my life. I
Mm.
actually have been led by my inner knowing most of my life. And then do the opposite, because contrasting is very important. Do the
Right?
opposite when you didn't listen to your knower.
Yes.
And how
Oh,
did that
so
go?
good. Oh boy, that could be a whole nother podcast.
Right? Like, oh my
So,
gosh.
no, so important. I love that you brought that up. I love that you brought that up because you're right. I mean, looking at the contrast of that brings up a whole other conversation of being able to see it from such a different lens and seeing it from hindsight and going, man,
Mm, that's
wow.
right. And it
Uh-huh.
really teaches you about yourself,
Yeah.
because really it's so interesting to me that, I use this analogy, which I heard a sermon on it forever ago, and I don't remember how it went, but the concept really landed with me. And it was the idea of how the identification of being a design. And he
Mm,
was talking about, he was like, we were designed, we did not design ourselves.
mhm,
And the society will show us that in a lot of different ways, but primarily, especially in the last few years, how people are so obsessed with taking personality tests. They're
mm,
so obsessed with the Enneagram and this and that. Or, like, when they see themselves in pictures, they're like, oh, the first person they look for is themselves, right? Where they're like, oh, how do I look? Or, we are so focused on understanding ourselves. Why?
mhm,
Because we didn't design us, right? We
mhm.
were designed. It's just like driving a car. I drive cars all day. I'm in my car right now. Like, you drive something all day, but you still need the manual for it because you didn't design it, right?
Right,
Like, I
right.
didn't, but I drive it every single day. Like, I know how it works. I know what sounds it makes. I know when I feel something that's off, but I
Mhm.
didn't design it. The same way, we did not design ourselves. Therefore, there is a responsibility on our lives to take inventory of our behaviors, of how things work, of understanding us. And
Mm,
in this process of life, like in this awesome short journey that we have on this earth, there are things that we have the responsibility of saying, look, I need to know what I'm really, really good at and areas that I'm not that great at, and areas where I know that I need to grow in.
yeah.
And specifically, we need to do a really good job at taking care of our heart and our emotions and giving us ourselves the credit when something went well, because we can then say, good job. Good job, Vio. I'm so proud of you. We
Mhm.
don't have enough people telling us how proud they are of us. We
Yeah.
just don't.
Oh,
We,
so
you
true.
know, we don't
Mhm.
have enough people saying, oh my gosh, did you see when you did not judge that person when you could have and you almost did and you felt like it, but you stopped yourself? I'm so proud of you. Good job. Like, we are responsible for doing that. And especially in this whole context of, the whole knowing, it's like, how do you know when you know? Okay,
Right.
don't get me wrong. I believe there's time and seasons in our lives where we're
Of
at a
course.
pivotal moment where God says, smacks you upside the head, and he's like, no, do it, right? But I don't think that like it has to be that way. I think so
Yeah.
much of what we do can be not just avoided, but can accelerate at such a greater level if we just take the time to ask ourselves some basic questions,
Mhm.
right? Take the time to ask ourselves, hey, what did it feel like the last time I was put in a position where I had to make the decision and I didn't know what the right decision was?
Mhm.
What did it feel like the last time I made the decision and it was the right decision? And what did it feel like last time when I was faced with something I didn't make the right decision?
Mhm.
Why? Because peace will govern your thoughts and it will
Yeah.
govern when it's the right thing.
Mhm.
And if there's something
Yeah.
disrupting it, it means that you need to figure out where's the disruption.
Mhm.
There's a responsibility. And I truly believe if we live that way, if you will take the time to honor you, honor your life, honor your thoughts, honor the path that you're on, so much can unfold and so much beauty is left along the way to where your life becomes a sweet swelling aroma only because you were conscious, only because you were actively saying today matters.
Mhm.
Today's stuff is sufficient for themselves. I matter.
Yeah.
And every room that I put myself in matters. Every person in front of me matters, and my decisions, I'm going to make them with confidence because I care, because
Yeah.
this matters.
So
So yeah.
good. Oh my gosh, girl. I know we can be on here forever. I have so many other things. I can't wait to be in a room with you again. I
I
can't wait
know.
to connect with you again because I just go, oh my gosh, these are the things that I love to just dive into and dig deeper
Mm,
because it just has such meaning and it helps me to be self-reflective. It also
yeah,
helps me to ask questions and be curious and I love it. It's so good. I wanted to definitely wrap it up with you being able to share with us, I know that you are someone that takes action. You're doing so many beautiful things in this life and I'd love for you to share, what are some of the things that you're up to now and you would want people to know about, where you're headed, and what's happening in this chapter or the next chapter of your journey. Please feel free to share any of that with us.
absolutely. Thank you so much. So, right now, we are in a really fun journey and transition of learning how to automate ourselves, right? My husband
Yay.
and I, we do run a financial brokerage. And so we teach families how money works and we help them win in their personal finances. So, whether that means having proper protection as far as life insurance goes, the right kind of life insurance, which kind is just a waste of money, teaching families these very crucial things, helping them to invest and getting themselves prepared for their financial future in retirement and anything in between, whether short-term savings, things of that nature. So we do that for families, and we have been in a obviously like brick and mortar kind of thing where we have been kneecap to kneecap and we love it and we will never not do that, but we are starting to learn how to automate ourselves, and that's been quite the journey.
Mhm.
And learning how to like reach broader spectrums of the world and of places. And so that's definitely something that's a work in progress, but look out for that. I just also
Good.
wrote an ebook that I'm super excited that is
Awesome.
going to be getting in the hands of folks, which is a basic pamphlet on like how to win in your personal finances, but how to do it God's way.
Oh,
You
I
know,
love that.
how to keep God at the center of that and paying attention to some basic principles of like what does scripture define as financial success and what does that look like. And so be paying attention for that. I'm going to be launching that soon. And other than that, we are pretty invested in our ministry in Romania. And if you guys, if you're people of prayer, if you can be praying for us in that regard, we are partnering with, it's called the Camino Felix. It's a house, it's an orphan house in Romania that has multiple different, it's like a micro community. And so they have multiple different households of families that have taken on, they have up to 10 orphans per family. They don't
Wow.
let them do much more than that, but each house is full. So they've got several hundred kids at this point in time. And so we would love to try and create as much awareness and support for that. I mean, we were there just a few weeks ago. Just this last month we were there, and just to see the needs of the families and the way that these hosting families are just pouring into these children and really loving on them with such
Oh,
excellence and such like sacrificial
wow.
way. It's so just absolutely beautiful. I wish I personally could do much more in that regard, but the very least that I could do is create awareness, and as our partnership continues to move forward, to be able to support them financially. And so if that's something that resonates with you at all, and it's something that you feel like, oh, I'd love to be able to do that, I'd love to connect you and get connected with you and see, even just a simple donation or anything, whatever God puts on your heart. And if it resonates with you at all. And so that's kind of what we're doing and where we're at. Obviously, I'm a mom of 4, so I'm investing pretty heavily in my children in this next season too, only because I believe that that's like probably the most greatest job title and gift that any mother could possibly have, especially in the season of your littles, is to give them your best time. And so that's one of my biggest hearts, is just to to love on my kids with everything in me, and then business second. And so
Yes.
that's just kind of us in a nutshell and where we're
I
headed.
love it. Now, I know we'll have it in our show notes, but where's the best place to reach you, to find you?
So I have Instagram, Facebook,
Okay.
and email are the best ways.
Perfect. Well, we'll make sure that we include all of those. And I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. I feel like that was just such a great conversation. It felt inspiring, but it also just took it to another level for all of us to just really reflect on our own lives and, be able to take those steps forward. It takes courage for sure. However, there is, if there is that inner knowing that you're feeling, to just, to be brave and step into that, because it's there for a reason. And I love just having this conversation. I can't wait for our next one, like I said. And I just want to say thank you again. And we cannot wait to connect. But,
Likewise, thank you. It's been my
oh,
honor and pleasure.
so good. Well, everybody out there, until next time, keep rising, keep shining, and know that the best is yet to come. Bye, friends. Thanks for joining me here today. Your presence means the world to me. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider leaving a rating and review, and don't forget to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Head to the show notes and let's connect. Rise to Shine Co. is ready to support you in coaching, collaboration, life tips, or even a coffee chat. Until next time, keep shining, my